The questions,
and,
I think.
we're going to say hi over to our Facebook.
Oh, we're saying hi to Facebook. You guys right there, hold on just a second. Hello, Facebook. Facebook Live. This is Matt Kilgo with the law offices of Matthew W. Kilgo and GeorgiaGunLawyers.com. This is our fearless host and promoter and website guru, Mariana Wegener. Should I just say Mariana, right? We don't want... Oh,
well, it's too late. It's on the screen.
Okay. We're doing a thank you to Justin and to Dan today. We're talking about gun laws, traffic laws, guns in cars. These are important things that we need to talk about. So let's get started. Let me give you just a brief overview of what I can tell you about the police stop process. If any of you guys drive half as fast as Justin or Dan, you've probably been stopped by the police before. And if you've been stopped by the police, that is the worst gut-wrenching experience because you know something's about to happen. You're just not sure what. Up walks the guy in the weird sunglasses and starts to talk to you. Now, one of the most important things that I can tell you about a traffic stop is don't hold court on the side of the road. Whatever you do, wait until the courthouse to make those statements. It's so easy. I've been a lawyer almost 21 years. And this applies. I see that a guy from Chicago just joined us. I'm a Georgia lawyer. I work in federal courts as well, but I'm a Georgia lawyer. I'm telling you things right now that apply all over the United States. If you're driving in the mountains of North Georgia, if you're driving the plains of the Midwest, if you're in California, if you're down on A1A in Florida, these types of things apply. You see those lights in the mirrors, pull over as quickly and as safely as you possibly can. That's the very first thing. You know, a lot of folks say, put your hands out the window. Right? No. We're not doing a California stop here, okay? If you put your hands out the window, most law enforcement officers that I know believe that you may have something in the car and you're trying to tell them that you have something in the car, okay? Don't put your hands out the window. Turn on the interior light, night or day. You might want to roll down a back window. Definitely roll down those windows if they're super tinted. Keep your hands at 10 and 2. And when this officer approaches gun law, I'm 25, you say you have a gun in the truck. We'll talk about that in just a minute, right? So let's put a pin in that.
Yeah.
When that officer approaches, be happy to take the ticket, okay? And when I say happy, you don't actually have to be happy to take the ticket, but take the ticket. Don't hold court on the side of the road. You know, don't get goaded into saying something that you'll regret from that officer. If he says, do you know how fast you were going? If you say, well, I thought I was only going 80 when the speed limit's 35, well, that's what you're going to be convicted for. I spent a lot of time as a traffic prosecutor when I was a young lawyer. And one of my favorite things to do was to have...
So you're an old lawyer now? Is that how it works?
Shut it, you. So I spent a lot of time as a traffic lawyer when I was a younger lawyer, we'll say. And one of my favorite things to do was to have a traffic trial, a trial with a judge, a speeding case. And you have folks come in and they'll bring graphs and they'll bring pictures and they don't know how to get them into evidence, and that's fine. After I'd done it 6 or 8 months, I just let them bring in whatever they wanted to bring in, right? And I only had to ask one question when they were on cross-examination. How fast do you think you were going? People don't want to lie in court, no matter who you are, and you want to look reasonable. So if the speed limit's 55 and you were going 90, you might say, well, I wasn't going more than 75. And the judge invariably would find you guilty of going 75 and a 55. And that's going to give you points on your license. It's going to give you a fine. You might even get a super speeder here in Georgia. So don't engage the officer. Be polite, but be firm. Don't answer any questions. Have your license ready. Say, officer, here's my license. I'll be happy to take that citation and move on about my day. If that officer wants to engage with you, just say, look, I really don't want to answer any questions. I understand you have a job to do. You're going to do whatever it is you're going to do. I'll happily accept that citation, and then I'll appear in court and we can discuss it. Be polite, but be firm. Don't engage in what you may have been doing because that officer is recording. They have a body camera. Most of them have body cameras now. They have cameras in their vehicles. So make sure you don't make any of those type statements. Take that citation, thank him for what he's doing that day, tell him that you'll be happy to report to court so you can discuss it. Then hire a lawyer, especially if you're really, really fast like Justin Norton or like Dan. Go ahead and hire that lawyer. Have that lawyer go in and talk to the prosecutor. Here in Georgia, you have a lot of options. You know, we have guilty pleas. We have not guilty pleas. We can have a trial with a judge or a jury. You can plead nolo contendere, no contest. And another popular misconception, and you'll hear this from a lot of judges, well, you can only plead nolo once every 5 years. That's absolutely not true. The law says that you can use it for virtually anything at any time. There are some things that you can't plead nolo to murder. You can't plead nolo to murder. I thought I stopped all my phone calls. Don't know how that happened.
You're just too popular.
I am too popular. That may have been someone calling to seek a lawyer. I don't know. I may have just lost some money there. You can plead nolo anytime you want. It's up to the judge to accept it. Now, in Georgia, the Department of Driver Services will only accept a nolo contendory plea once every 5 years to keep the points associated from that speeding citation, and that can be anywhere from 2 points on your license to 6 points on your license. They'll only use that once every 5 years to keep those points from being added to your record. So there are some things that you can do. You can request to have the speed reduced to a non-reportable offense, which is 14 miles over. That doesn't always work, especially if you have a history. I'm looking at someone right now. If you have that history, try and find a lawyer who's familiar with that jurisdiction. All the local jurisdictions, obviously, I'm familiar with, and obviously I'd love to have you call. I'll be happy to consult with you for free. We'll talk about that. But make sure that you consult with a lawyer, especially if you're going above 75 on a 2-lane road or above 85 anywhere on any road in Georgia. That's a super speeder. Not only are you going to, if you get convicted, get a fine from the court, you'll also get a fine from the Department of Driver Services. So make sure that you discuss that with an attorney, obviously. Any competent attorney can assist you there. But don't hold court on the side of the road. That's not the time to make your case. And look, if you tell that officer, you've got a job to do, I'll sit here politely, I'll take that citation, that may change the officer's mind. It's against the law to fix tickets. It's not against the law to convince an officer not to give you one. And sometimes that's all it takes, is just having the right attitude. But if you had that attitude, and even with that attitude, if he's going to give you a ticket or she's going to give you a ticket, you're going to get a ticket. Call your attorney, work through the process from there.
Okay, so we are getting a lot of questions through our Instagram about some technicalities, and actually we've gotten a lot of messages about this too, Matt. If you are, just to summarize real quick, so in Georgia, the law for having a concealed weapon and apply for a concealed weapons license is you have to be how old?
21 for a weapons carry license in Georgia. That's how old you have to be.
Fantastic. And then what about carrying just to own a gun? Just to own a firearm in Georgia?
Just to own a firearm. It depends on what type of firearm we're talking about. If we're talking about long guns, if we're talking about rifles and shotguns, I thought I turned that off. I have no idea. We'll do better next time, I promise. We'll actually have this set up to do a little bit better next time. If we're talking about rifles and shotguns, there's no age restriction on when you can possess it. However, you have to be 18 to purchase those from an FFL or from any other person. If we're talking about handguns, at the age of 18, you can purchase those from a private person in a private sale.
Okay. So let's say you are 19 then, and you are not a convicted felon, and you would like to carry a pistol in your car for protection.
Okay.
What are the legalities for that?
So you can't get a weapons carry license until you're 21. So if you're 19 years old, you can't get a weapons carry license. But at the age of 18, you can possess it. Now, anyone can possess a firearm in their home, in their car, or in their place of business. So let's say you want to carry it in your car. Now, here's where it gets kind of tricky. If you want to carry it in your own car, that's perfectly fine. And as long as you're eligible to possess it, you can carry it anywhere in the car, loaded, unloaded, and loaded in Georgia means around in the chamber or around in the cylinder if it's a revolver. Most people don't carry revolvers these days as their primary form of protection. Personal choice. If you're carrying a revolver, that's fine. Any round in the chamber, any round in the cylinder is a loaded firearm, which means as long as there's no round in the chamber, it's not loaded. So you can carry it anywhere in the car, loaded, unloaded, openly, or concealed, and that's without a weapons carry license. Georgia is only one of 2 states that I know of, Georgia and Vermont, that has no requirement that you advise a police officer, if you're stopped, that you have a firearm in the car or that you have a weapons carry license. So there's no mandatory reporting requirement in Georgia. If you're in another state, you need to look to the specifics of your state. For instance, I traveled this weekend to Florida for a baseball tournament for one of my sons. Florida has a mandatory reporting requirement. If you have a weapons carry license, you got to hand that to the officer at the same time that you hand your license over. I'm not a Florida lawyer. I can get you in touch with Florida lawyers, but that's what my Florida lawyers told me. I'm a member or an attorney for U.S. Law Shield, which is a nationwide firearms legal defense program. There are attorneys in all 50 states, 500,000 members. So I called the U.S. attorney or the U.S. Law Shield attorneys in Florida about travel to Florida and carry while I'm in Florida. And you have to make sure to follow their rules, the rules of the state that you're in. So you can carry in your car if you're 19. Here's a big exception that I see in the law. The law says that if it is your vehicle. Now, if you are in someone else's vehicle, you have to have their permission, which is fine, but you also have to otherwise be eligible for a weapons carry license. So if you're in someone else's vehicle, you got to be 21 and be eligible for that weapons carry license. That means, I read that, a very tight, strict reading of that would mean to me that if you are in your parents' vehicle and it is not your vehicle, and there's an argument to be made that it is your vehicle, there is a strict reading of that would mean even if you're driving a vehicle that you have permission to drive, say from your parents or from a guardian, but it's not your vehicle, you could be in violation of the law. Now, is there an officer out there who's going to read that strictly enough? Probably not, but there could be some out there. I know some really, really smart police officers who know a lot about gun law. I teach classes with them all the time. So there may be that officer, there may be that prosecutor who says, it was your dad's car, it wasn't your car, I'm charging you with a crime. My advice to you would be, if you are driving that car, make sure that your name is on the title, make sure that your name is on the loan, make sure that you have something giving you ownership of that vehicle. Because if it is truly your vehicle, you shouldn't have any problems at all carrying inside the car. Good question. Hopefully
Yes.
a good answer. What's next?
Follow up to that.
Follow up.
Let's say you are transporting a firearm in your vehicle. In Georgia, does that firearm need to be loaded, unloaded, ammunition separate from the firearm? How does that work in Georgia? Because every state's a little different.
Every state is a little bit different. In Georgia, loaded, unloaded, doesn't matter. You can have a full magazine. It's not a clip unless you are shooting a World War II issue Garand or an M1 carbine. Not a clip, it's a magazine. You can have a full magazine seated in the mag well, no round in the chamber, that's unloaded. However, the law in Georgia doesn't distinguish between loaded firearms or unloaded firearms, only with respect to juveniles. So you got to be over the age of 18 anyway to possess a handgun. Otherwise, it's a violation of the law. Loaded, unloaded, doesn't matter. Anywhere in the car, openly or concealed, you can carry that firearm so long as you're eligible, meaning no felony convictions, no misdemeanor crimes of domestic violence. You're not on first offender probation. The first offender is one free bite at the apple that everybody gets for their first felony, but you can also use it for a misdemeanor. My recommendation, if you're young, you got a misdemeanor marijuana type charge, contact a lawyer who will help you. Try not to use your first offender. Okay? If you're in your late 50s or early 60s, this is the first time you've ever been arrested, yeah, probably okay to use that first offender. Everybody's situation is different. That's why it's so important that you contact an attorney. Always contact an attorney in situations like that. If the cuffs go on, the call should go out to an attorney. Now, that's an attorney telling you that. I have a house painter, and when I ask him if my house needs painting, what does he say? Yes, your house needs painting. Absolutely. That's going to be my advice, is always at least consult with an attorney before you make any legal decisions. The vast majority of criminal defense attorneys will give you a free consultation. So make sure you get a consultation. Get 2 consultations if you have to. We don't mind. Go ahead and do that. Ask for a referral. There are plenty of people out there happy to give you one. Next question.
All right. Place of business. We mentioned how that's part of Georgia laws for legally possessing a firearm to protect your habitation.
Right.
So let's say that your place of business, in this case, I think our question refers to where they work. What if their company says no firearms?
When we say in Georgia, there are special protections for your home, your car, and your place of business. That means a place of business that you own. My office, for instance, my mom just sent me a text. My hair is sticking straight up. Thanks, Mom. That's great. I love it. How did she find out about this? Mom, I love you. My mom's recent cancer recovery. She's doing great. She's had to be at home because of COVID-19. I'm glad she's watching. Mom, I love you. Thanks for sending me referrals. What was the question again?
Place of business.
Oh, place of business. That's right. So your habitation, you can carry a firearm in your habitation, your home, your car, your place of business. If you go to work for somebody else, that is not your place of business. That's the owner's place of business. And what the law in Georgia says is that an owner can be treated or the business owner is treated as the property owner. Property owners can exclude you or eject you if you have a firearm. Okay? So if your business says no firearms, you can't carry them into the building. But the law, there is a law in Georgia, and I want to say it's 1612-135. Don't quote me on that. If you really want to know, send us a message through Instagram or Facebook, and I'll get you that law. I can send it to you. The law says that your employer cannot condition your prospective employment on an agreement that you will not bring a firearm in your personal vehicle if you have a weapons carry license and the firearm is out of sight. In other words, the business owner can't say, well, look, I'm going to, when you go to apply for a job, look, I'm going to give you this job on the condition that you don't bring a gun and leave it in your car. They can't say that. The law says you are allowed to bring in that firearm and leave it in your car with a weapons carry license, and it's got to be hidden away. Now, the law also says they can still fire you. So even though you do it, Georgia is still what we call a work-at-will state, so they can still fire you. So that's a very difficult topic. So obviously, if you run into that issue, please always call an attorney to discuss that with them. Here's the other thing that I'll say about businesses in general. If you carry a firearm like I do, and because of COVID-19, I haven't been in court for 3 months. I'm usually in court at least 3 to 5 days a week, but I haven't been in court for 3 months. I'm starting to go back to court just this week. I started carrying a firearm with me every day, and it's going to be hard to get out of that practice. Mm-hmm. If you have a weapons carry license, you can carry in Georgia in virtually any location, public or private. There are some obvious restrictions: courthouses, mental health facilities, nuclear power plants. If your job is at a nuclear power plant or you're just going to a nuclear power plant, don't carry a bazooka, don't carry a gun, don't carry a cordless rifle, don't carry anything. Mm-hmm. If you see a sign that says no guns allowed, there's nothing in Georgia law that says a sign is enough to keep you out. If you go into a business and they ask you to leave because you have a firearm and you don't leave, it's not a gun charge, it's criminal trespass. Criminal trespass is different, and with criminal trespass, they have to give you notice. You have to be on notice that you're no longer free to be there. Who said you saw the sign? What sign? I didn't see a sign. So there's nothing in Georgia law that says a sign is absolutely enough to keep you out of that business. Now, a sign is some evidence that they don't want you there, but as long as you don't talk to police and you don't make any statements, how are they going to know you actually saw the sign? So all the criminal trespass laws in Georgia, all the cases that come out of criminal trespass say that you've got to have some official notice. Official notice would be, sir, thank you for buying $15 nachos. You got to get out of here. Now, if that's the case, take your gun, take your nachos, go somewhere where they respect your right to carry. I think that's a very important thing. Next question.
All right. So let's say you are pulled over by an officer for a traffic violation, and you are carrying a firearm in your car.
Okay.
Do you have an obligation in Georgia to tell that officer that there is a firearm in your car?
No, you're under no legal obligation. There's no law in Georgia that says you have to tell a police officer that you have a gun. This is totally a case-by-case, in-the-moment, common-sense decision. If that firearm is in your trunk, I would never advise keeping it in your trunk. It's hard to get back there if you have to use it. If that firearm's in your glove box and you've already got your license out, there's no reason for that firearm to come up in conversation. Now, if you're carrying on your waist, by your pocket, and that's where your license is, you may want to tell that officer, I have a firearm, I have a lawful license for it. And here's the other thing too. An officer cannot just stop you in Georgia and ask you for a weapons carry license simply because he or she sees you carrying a gun. That's a violation of the law. Now, is it one that's actionable? Probably not. And that officer may come up with some excuse to stop you and say, oh, by the way, do you have a weapons carry license? That's why if you're approached by an officer like that, you never actually have to answer questions. The easiest thing to say is, officer, have I been detained? If you're in custody and they begin to question you, that's when your Miranda rights apply. Totally different issue. But what was the initial question?
Do you need to tell them that there's a gun in the car?
Do you have to tell them there's a gun in the car? Long story short, no. Use your common sense. If that gun's going to factor into your ability to give them information, I would definitely let them know that you have a firearm in the car. Remember, lots of officers work in pairs. So if there's an officer speaking to you on the driver's side, there may be one that you don't see on the passenger side. And if that officer, if he or she sees you reach for your wallet and sees a gun, doesn't hear the conversation, the only thing that officer is going to see is a firearm. And I think there was a gentleman, Facebook Live, was shot and killed 2 years ago just based on this issue. He reaches for his wallet, they see the gun, the officer on the other side of the car doesn't hear and says gun, 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 and he gets shot. So there's no legal requirement, just make sure that you don't put yourself in harm's way. Here's one of the most important things I can tell you. Never touch that firearm during that conversation with that officer. And that officer shouldn't ask you to do anything with that firearm. Most of them will say, look, you don't shoot me, I don't shoot you. They don't care. Most of them. Some of them obviously do. And as recent events tell us, we don't know how people are going to react, right? Don't touch that firearm. If that officer asks you, well, you need to hand me that gun, say, look, officer, I appreciate the fact that you're in charge of this situation right now. I'm not touching that gun. If you want me to get out of this car and you want to take it from me, that's perfectly fine. I don't want anything that I do to be misinterpreted by you or by your partner. If you want to disarm me, that's fine. I'm not going to touch that gun. I think that's the right way to do that, to keep you free, to keep you clear of any issues with police, and to let them know that you're not a threat to them. And then take that ticket and call your lawyer.
All right. Do you practice law outside of Georgia?
I have only ever practiced law outside of Georgia in a couple of different instances. I as part of my job, I used to be a prosecutor. I was a prosecutor in state court and superior court and prosecuted felonies. And then I went to work for the Recording Industry Association of America, and I helped track down counterfeiters for a few years. As part of that, I learned how to prosecute, how to handle civil copyright and trademark cases. And I've taken a couple of those outside the state before. And you can do that in federal court if you follow the right steps. I've done that. Other than that, though, I don't practice outside of Georgia. Here's the great thing. I've been a lawyer over 20 years. I'm originally from Alabama. I have friends who are attorneys all over the Southeast. For many years, I practiced in a practice that specialized in DUI. I'm now in my own practice, and those guys are still doing a lot of DUI. And I still do DUI. But because of that, I have friends and colleagues all over the United States who practice DUI and who specifically practice in firearms. Here's a shameless plug, go to the American Council of Second Amendment Lawyers. I'm one of the founding attorneys for the American Council of Second Amendment Lawyers. They have attorneys all over the United States. I'm also an independent program attorney, as I said, for U.S. Law Shield. U.S. Law Shield has attorneys all over the United States to assist gun owners. Most of those lawyers do criminal defense matters. So if you need a lawyer in any particular state, give me a call. I'm happy to connect you with another attorney. I don't charge anything for that.
Excellent. Okay, here's a traffic question.
Traffic.
All right, let's say that an individual with no prior convictions got a speeding ticket going 74 in a 45.
74 and a 45. Lawyers can't do math. So how much is that's like 100 miles an hour over the speed limit. Right?
125, yeah.
Wow.
I can't do that.
No. 74 and a 45. That's going to be 29 miles over the speed limit. Okay.
So yeah. Your age times 2.
My age times 2. Wow.
You can do math, you see?
No, I've been telling people, folks, I'm 46 years old. I found out last night that I was 46 years old. I've been telling people for 6 months that I was 47. My wife said, hey, good news, you're younger. Yeah.
So wait, has your birthday happened yet?
My birthday happens every year.
Okay. Has it happened this year?
No. Actually, my birthday's in December. December 3rd, for those of you who like to give gifts. I like puppies, warm hugs, and walks on the beach. 74 and a 45 is 29 miles over the speed limit. In Georgia, 29 miles over the speed limit probably is also going to get you, depending on the jurisdiction, a charge of reckless driving. It can. 29 miles over the speed limit is 4 points on your license. If you hit 15 points in a 2-year period, your license will be suspended. Those points roll every 2 years. So they go on your license on day 1 when you enter a plea or you're found guilty. They come off 365 times 2, whatever that is. So 2 years later, they come off. If during that 2-year period you hit 15 points, your license is suspended. If you get a 4-point offense, particularly if you are under the age of 21, you could be facing an automatic suspension of your license. If you're under 21 and you're more than 24 miles an hour, 24 or more above the speed limit, there's an automatic 6-month suspension of your license, which means you need to get a lawyer who practices in that jurisdiction to talk to the prosecutor to see what they can figure out for you.
And so this individual's question asked, how can he get out of the ticket?
How can he get out of it? Well, getting out of it is a very unique way to put it. Very rarely do you ever totally get out of a citation. My recommendation, if you're going that fast, very first thing, go and take a basic driver's improvement course. Anything a prosecutor is going to do with you, you want to try and get that down to as low as possible. 14 over is the primary number, because at 14 miles over the speed limit, that citation is not going to be reported against your license for points. If it doesn't go on your license, guess what? Insurance is probably not going to find out about it. But you've got to give something to get something. And sometimes, most times, this is where a lawyer would help, but I'll give you a couple of trade secrets. First and foremost, go and take that I think it's a 6-hour basic driver improvement course here in Georgia. It's going to cost you about $85, I think. However, you go in with that in your hand, it's going to show the prosecutor that you're willing to work. If you like doing a little bit of community service ahead of time, go and find a nonprofit, what we call a 501c3 nonprofit organization. They don't pay federal income taxes on the money that they collect because they're a not-for-profit agency. Lots of folks say, oh, I love animals. I'm going to go and work at the Humane Society. Keep in mind, you are working at the Humane Society for free. You are doing the jobs that the majority of people who work there for money don't want to do. So just be very careful if you go and work for someplace like an animal shelter. Know that you're going to be doing the really dirty work. Mm-hmm. But if you go and get 8 hours of community service, 10 hours of community service, you walk in with that in your hand as well, that gives you a good jumping off point to say, look, I don't have anything on my record. I realize it was stupid. I've completed a driving school. I've done some risk evaluation and decided that I'm going to do some community service. That's probably going to go a long way towards helping you get to where you want to be.
So overall, it sounds like if you admit, I made a stupid decision, I'm sorry, and here are the steps I'm taking to become more responsible, that's usually seen pretty favorably?
It can be seen favorably. And here's the thing. The first time you go to court, you don't have to enter a plea. Your plea could be not guilty. Your request could be to speak to the prosecutor. And please don't make any admissions. Prosecutors are listening. Anything you say will be used against you, right? So, Mr. Prosecutor, Madam Prosecutor, what is your best offer? Well, my best offer is that you do 6 months probation, you pay a $500 fine, you do 40 hours community service, and you take a basic driver improvement course. Okay, well, is there something that I can do to make that a better offer? No. Okay, well, how about this? Let me talk to a lawyer. I'd like to continue my case so that I can ask for a reset, ask for an opportunity to speak to an attorney. Some local jurisdictions have the ability to provide you with an attorney. If they're not going to do that, you definitely need to speak to someone before you make that decision, because that could have a great impact on your ability to drive.
All right. Let's go to another firearms question.
Okay.
We have an individual asking, what are the limitations in Georgia law for protecting the lives of others in public with a handgun? Ooh. Are they the same as protecting yourself or your family?
So a good question. What are the limitations on protecting someone else with a firearm? Now, in Georgia, you have the right to protect yourself or any other person to the same extent that he or she could protect himself or herself. The law in Georgia is entitled Defense of Self or Others. So in the title of the law, it even says that you can use threats of force, back up or I'll protect myself, force, kicking, slapping, punching, biting, or deadly force. That force intended or likely to cause death or great bodily harm. You can use that to protect yourself or any other person. If you put yourself in his or her shoes, you can use the same level of force that person could use to protect himself or herself. So it doesn't have to be someone you know, Doesn't have to be somebody that you like. If you find that person in a position where you have to protect them and they cannot protect themselves, and most frequently I get this question with respect to how do I protect my family? Mm-hmm. Well, you have a right to protect your family just as they have a right to protect themselves. And a lot of times, I have an 8-year-old, no, I have a 10-year-old.
Good math.
Yeah, 10-year-old and a 14-year-old. That's the kind of thing you don't forget, I guess. I have a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old. They can't protect themselves the way that the way that my wife could protect them, right? My wife's the best shot. I say that. My 10-year-old's the best shot in the house. My wife's the second best shot in the house. Then it's my 14-year-old. Then it's anyone who comes to visit, and then it's me. But they can't protect themselves the way that my wife or I could protect them. The law allows you the ability to protect anybody so long as you are using the level of force that they could use.
All right. That's a great question.
Yeah, great question.
We get that one a lot.
We do. And I actually now, another time for another shameless plug, because I am an attorney for U.S. Law Shield. I don't work for them, I work with them. They're an independent firearms legal defense program. They're in all 50 states, as I said. They have seminars that they put on every week all across the United States to answer these very basic questions. And right now, we're starting to get kicked back off in Georgia. I did one last night in Roswell, Georgia. It was fantastic over at Sharpshooters.
That was fun.
We live streamed that. Mariana was there. She put all of this together so that we could live stream it. Go to gunlawseminar.com. That's gunlawseminar.com. And look for your state. You can look for those. And I don't get anything. I'm not suggesting that you join because ethically I can't do that. I'm just telling you that I'm their lawyer. I tell people a lot of times I prefer that you probably just hire me because I'm going to charge a lot more than they do. But great program. Go and take a look at them. Go and come, register to come to a seminar, and you might actually enjoy that. So go to gunlawseminar.com. It'll be a great place that you can find some good information on gun
And
laws.
I just popped it up on our Facebook feed.
Oh, look at that.
Perfect.
Oh, that's the best look I've had all day. All right, what's next?
All right. So, again, with firearms, we know that there are some places in Georgia where you are and are not allowed, that's a terrible angle, are and are not allowed to carry a firearm in Georgia.
Right.
So, obviously, any kind of federal building,
Right.
no firearms.
No federal buildings and no firearms in federal buildings.
Inside of a school, no firearms.
No firearms. Bad news.
All right. Inside of a house of worship, like a church or a synagogue.
You can carry a firearm in a house of worship, a church, a synagogue, a mosque, a meeting house. If it's defined as a house of worship, you can carry a firearm there if you have permission from the governing authority of that church. Now, here's what's interesting about that. This law changed in July of 2014 in Georgia. There was something called what the news media called the Guns Everywhere Bill. It was actually called the Safe Carry and Protection Act that now allows churches to decide whether you can bring firearms in. And it's not on a case-by-case basis. I tell folks it's like fourth grade in bubble gum. If you get a piece of bubble gum, everybody gets a piece of bubble gum. If the church says you can carry there, then you can carry there. However, you do have to have a weapons carry license. The day after this law went into effect, the Catholic Archdiocese for Greater Atlanta, and I apologize if I've skewered the actual governing body's name, the Catholic Church said, no, we are the governing authority, no guns in the Catholic Church. And I believe it was also the Episcopal Church did the same thing. There are a couple of large church body organizations who said can't carry. So, but really, if it's Methodist, okay, Southern Baptist, I think it's going to be on a case-by-case basis. And if they have a church security team, someone at some point has given some permission. And like I said, it's like fourth grade in bubble gum. If a church security team gets to carry, then you should be able to carry as well.
And do you need to get that written permission from the church?
Written permission, here's what I say.
Or can you just assume that because someone else can carry in the church, you may also carry if you have your weapons carry license?
I would never assume anything when it comes to firearms and safety. Lawyers love to kill trees, right? Sorry if you don't love to kill trees, but lawyers love paperwork. I would say get it in writing, countersigned by 3 Episcopal bishops and St. Peter if you can. Just make sure you have something in writing. Make sure you have some formal declaration. Look to the church's bylaws. Look to the church's official statements to see if they have something along those lines. And if you can't find anything, ask.
Okay. Hospitals.
Hospitals is interesting. Technically, hospital is a private location, but you can carry in a private location with a weapons carry license. If they ask you to leave, then you must leave. If that hospital is a teaching hospital, if it's considered a school, and you'd have to actually convince me, you'd have to show me that a hospital is considered a school, then no, you wouldn't be able to carry into it. P.S. That also goes for churches that have schools in them. If the church has a private school, the law says that whatever else happens in that building, if there's a school, it's a school. So if you have a church that has a private school, that's not a church, it's a private school, which means with a weapons carry license, you can leave the firearm in your car when it's in a locked compartment, or you can carry it in your car when you're picking up or dropping off students, but you cannot carry into the building unless that school has gone through the proper channels to initiate a weapons carry. There's actually a code section for that, which I believe is Official Code of Georgia 1611-130.2.
Bruce,
Bruce,
put it in the comments.
Bruce Greenfield is here, everybody. Listen, Bruce is a fantastic guy. He is in the senior leadership for GeorgiaCarry.org. GeorgiaCarry.org is Georgia's premier grassroots organization for gun owners. They have a ton of input in the General Assembly every year about how gun laws are made and carried out here in Georgia. He's a personal friend. He knows a ton of great information, and thankfully he's listening to make sure that I get everything right. What Bruce says is that the Presbyterians also said no way to guns in the churches. So if you're a Presbyterian, unfortunately, you're going to have to, I don't know what you're going to have to pray harder.
Learn martial arts.
Learn martial arts.
Use these guns.
That's right. I don't have those.
And Corps of Engineer property.
Corps of Engineer property. Okay, folks. So the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers administers a great deal of public lands. And Bruce could probably put us in the right direction on this, but the last article that I read on it said that the Corps of Engineers administers something along the lines of 17 million acres or 17 million square miles for public lands that they administer. And you can't carry on Corps property. Now, those rules may be changing. Right now, as I recall, we are in a period of public comment on changes to the federal regulations that apply to Corps of Engineer property that would allow us to carry handguns for protection. Currently, those regulations have not been changed. But here's one thing that you can do. You can apply for a waiver to the Corps district that the location you're in, or the location you want to go to, is located in. So we're talking, if you're in Georgia, we're talking about Red Top Mountain, Allatoona, Lake Lanier. There are two separate U.S. Army Corps of Engineer districts that administer our Corps Engineer lands here in Georgia. One is in Mobile, Alabama. The other is in Savannah, Georgia. So each one of them has a separate website. Each one of them has a slightly separate process. You have to go to their website, look for that information, follow their rules. But if you write to them and request a waiver, they'll give it to you. And you can also go to GeorgiaCarry.org, shameless plug for Georgia Carry, and they have that information embedded on their website. They have a great website, and they'll be more than happy to help you as well.
All right. Do you need a weapons carry license to have a firearm in your car?
No, you do not. Don't need a weapons carry license to have a firearm in your car, except there are a few rules you have to follow. We talked about this a little bit earlier, maybe a late joiner right there. As long as you're eligible to possess that firearm, you got to be, for handguns, over the age of 18. It's got to be in a car that you own. If you're over the age of 21, you don't need a weapons carry license so long as the owner of the vehicle says it's okay. If it's your vehicle and you're lawful to possess that firearm, you can carry it anywhere in the car, loaded, unloaded, openly, or concealed. And you don't necessarily have to tell the police that you have one, but if it's common sense and they're going to see it, you may want to remark on it. If they start to ask you too many questions, call a lawyer.
All right. Let's see. And we have another question. Let's just answer that real quick.
Did I miss the traffic law discussion? Are y'all covering that or just guns? We have covered quite a bit, and this is on Instagram. We have covered quite a bit of firearm law and traffic law. Is this being recorded?
We are recording the Facebook feed, and so it'll get somewhere.
Oh, Atlanta Custom Rap says he'll talk more about traffic laws soon. That was a very nice prod.
Well, we're we're doing Q&A. So
right, we're doing Q&A. If you've got a traffic law question,
bring it on.
Now's the time to ask. I'm going to stay on here as long as we need to answer these questions. Can that handgun be not in your name? That's actually a good question.
That's a great question for lots of reasons.
Lots of reasons. So the question is, can you possess a handgun that's not in your name? Folks, there is no registration of firearms in Georgia. There's no federal registration of firearms. Now, some states have registration of firearms. Georgia does not. The only people who know that you bought a firearm are the manufacturer who sent it to the dealer and the dealer that you bought it from. And that dealer is prohibited by federal law from digitizing that information. You fill out a form called a Form 4473. And it's a form that the ATF uses, and then they give it to the FBI, and they do a national instant background check. It's called the NICS, and this happens instantaneously when you go to buy a gun from a federal firearms licensee, right? Now, so they'll know that you're buying a gun, but after 24 hours, they dump that information, and that form is kept in a locked compartment with that dealer for 20 years. So only the dealer and you should know that you bought that gun. There's no registration. Which means if I want to buy a gun from Mariana, I can do that. Now, if you're buying or selling a gun to somebody else, there are some things that you need to know. First and foremost, you can only sell a firearm to someone who lives in your state. Technically, you can sell to anybody, but if you're going to sell to someone who lives in another state, that person has to accept that firearm from a federal firearms licensee, a federally licensed dealer in their state, which means you got to ship it to them. So if you're selling a gun to someone in Maine, for instance, I'm going to take it to a federal firearms licensee that I have here, maybe True Prep or Big Woods Goods in Holly Springs or Governor's Gun Club. There are a ton of places. The Armory down in Fayetteville.
I haven't been there.
God, I'm blanking on the name. Road Trip, yeah. There are tons of fantastics. Armories? Anyway, tons of great places to do that, federal firearms licensees. You go and you give it to them, and they'll ship it to another FFL, and then that person has to get it. If I am accepting a firearm from my dad, who still lives in Alabama, I've got to take that to a federal firearms licensee here in Georgia. He's got to take it to one here in Georgia. That's how I'm accepting some guns that I inherited from my grandfather pretty soon, is I have to take them to a federal firearms licensee here in Georgia, and they have to run a background check on me, and then I can get them. So you can sell to someone in your state. They got to be of legal age to possess the firearm, no felony convictions. Here's the easiest thing to do. Demand and require two things: a Georgia driver's license and a Georgia weapons carry license. That way you know they're old enough to have a weapons carry license and they're residents of the state of Georgia. And that way you're going to minimize your risk if you're selling to someone in a personal sale. I did it just last week. Made a good deal of money off of a rifle and a pistol and went and purchased a brand new pistol. We're actually putting together a new video that we'll have out here in a couple of weeks about found money and what kind of gun would you buy with found money.
And, honestly, anyone on our communities in Facebook or on Instagram, we would love to hear what you would do with $2,500 to burn at the gun store.
That's right.
What would you buy?
Let's say you sold some firearms and you got $2,500 for them. Let's say you found $2,500. If you just had $2,500 to blow, let us know what kind of firearms you would buy and why. I've spoken to some folks who say, well, look, I'm going to get a pistol and a rifle and a shotgun. You can do that. I have some folks who said, I'm going to buy a super high-end long-range rifle. You can do that. I happen to buy a top-of-the-line 2011 pistol. It's a 1911 style pistol in 9mm, and we'll talk about what that is and why I bought that. We're going to have a couple of guest commentaries. James Reeves from TFB is actually going to help us out and send us a video. He's another U.S. Law Shield attorney, fantastic guy. I would not fit in those shorts that he wears. He's awesome. So he's gonna respond. I'm gonna ask Bruce to give us Autry's Armory. Thank you, Bruce. I stumbled over the word Autry's Armory. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So play this game with us. Send us a quick video of what you'd buy with $2,500. And
Absolutely.
it'd be so funny.
What?
Is if we wrote down on a piece of paper what we would buy, really specific, and if someone gives us the exact same thing.
Oh, give him something. That's a good idea. I think
Wouldn't
maybe we could do
fun?
that.
We'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that. Daisy Red Ryder BB gun. For $2,500, you could buy, let's see, how many times does 100 go into 2,500? 25 times? You could buy 100 Red Riders. Should we do that?
I think that'd be buy 100 Red Riders?
No, we're not going to do that. Okay. Maybe we should give out some Red Riders.
Branded Red Riders.
Branded Red Riders. That's a great idea.
If only we knew somebody that could wrap them for us.
Ooh, yeah, a custom wrapped Daisy Red Rider. Man, that's going to be so expensive. I might not even be able to afford that. Well, that's Silverado Man 61. Thank you for that. We're actually going to look into that. If we can figure that out, we may have to send him one of those.
Okay. Also,
that's going to be awesome.
We did have another question, and it's under the category that I like to call "You Need a Lawyer." The question was, what if you have marijuana under 28 grams in your car and a gun?
Ooh,
when you get pulled over.
Marijuana under 28 grams. So that is a very interesting number. And I did see the question, Nighthawk, that's close, didn't pick up a Nighthawk. I did see something in here about a Tika TX3 CTR. Ooh. Wow. Ooh, we're talking a Vortex PS2, 5 to 25 in MRADs. We're talking somebody who likes long distance right there.
Yeah, that you have excellent taste in firearms. Thank you.
Mariana's a big fan, by the way. So 28 grams, that's an interesting number. And the number's interesting. This is one of the few parts of math that criminal lawyers at least understand. 28.35 grams is an ounce. Anything under an ounce would be a misdemeanor. Anything over an ounce would be a felony. It gets really tricky because a lot of times you will find police officers who happen to weigh the bag. Sometimes that marijuana ends up wet. Do you know what happens to wet marijuana? It weighs a lot more, right? So let's try and keep it well below 28 ounces if you are traveling with it. The firearm itself could be a little problematic. You could be looking at the potential for possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. It'd have to be, I think, a felony amount. I don't think that would apply to misdemeanor marijuana. Honestly, I think I'd have to look that up. But if you have any very specific questions about that, you need to get in touch with us on Instagram, and I can connect with you, and we can discuss that.
But I am not a lawyer. However, I do think, Matt, and correct me if I'm wrong, that if you are getting arrested for a crime, mm-hmm. Let's say you happen to have a firearm in the car at the same time. Mm-hmm. How does the presence of that firearm then affect your charges?
It could greatly affect your charges because a police officer is going to think that you had that firearm in there to effectuate some criminal purpose. You had it in there to help you sell drugs. Believe it or not, if you have 2 bags of marijuana and they're both under an ounce and you have a gun, that could be considered enough for possession with intent. Because what do drug dealers use to protect their marijuana? Firearms. So be very careful. Obviously, marijuana is against the law. Whether it should be or not, I'm not taking a stand on that. I tend to be very libertarian about those types of issues. But the fact is, it's against the law for now in Georgia. And here's the thing, too. If you live in a state that's decriminalized the possession of marijuana, you're going to have to make a tough decision about whether you want to use marijuana or whether you want to use a firearm. Mm-hmm. Because when you go to a federal firearms licensee and you apply for that firearm, there is a question on that form 4473 that says, are you a user or addicted to an illicit substance? Please note, the use of marijuana, though it has been decriminalized in some states, is still considered a federal crime. So even if you live in Colorado, where they have decriminalized the possession and recreational use of marijuana, it's going to make it a lot harder if you're truthful on that 4473 to obtain a firearm.
And then we had a follow-up question. How does that change if it's possession of cocaine?
Oh, okay. So possession of cocaine is definitely a felony. And at that point, you're looking at the difference between simple possession under Official Code 161330. J, I think it's 1 or 2. No, it's not J. J is marijuana.
Bruce.
161330. Bruce is not going to know that.
Okay.
He better not know marijuana laws or
Did you hear that, Bruce? He challenged you.
Or drug laws. So under 161330, it's going to either be simple possession or possession with intent. And that firearm there definitely could push it to possession with intent, which is going to have a larger range of minimum and maximum sentences. And it's going to be a lot harder to talk your way out of, obviously.
Okay, speaking of talking your way out of something, we had another question. Should you always, quote, fight a traffic ticket? Should you always fight a traffic ticket?
That's a very good question, and that's a very... I'd say that depends on the situation, depends on who you are. And fight could mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. I meet a lot of folks who say, well, I just paid a ticket. How did I plead guilty to it? Here's what happens. When you pay a ticket, what you're doing is you are posting a bond. And that bond is money that's going into the court to keep you out of jail. When the time comes, they forfeit that bond and take that money, and that amounts to your fine. But you're also admitting guilt by just posting the bond or by paying that citation. So you've admitted guilt, and especially if you're under 21, don't ever just pay a ticket. Now that may be different from fighting a ticket, but don't ever just pay a ticket, especially if it's a ticket that could wind up suspending your license. You send that money in, you think you're done, and then a month later you get a notice from the DDS that says your license has been suspended. Right? So whether you fight can take on a lot of different a lot of different outcomes. I would say it's a flexible word. I would say at a minimum, go talk to somebody. Now, if you're from North Georgia and you get a ticket in Florida, if you really want to go back to Florida, go ahead and fight that ticket. If you want to just go ahead and pay it, I think you should at least consult with an attorney or find some good information about the ramifications of just paying that ticket. And a lot of times if you go back in, you talk to a prosecutor, you might be able to talk them down on that ticket. Maybe, I don't know. You might be able to find something there that's helpful to you. You might find a judge who's willing to reduce the fine. You might be able to use a nolo contendere plea, which would keep it off your driving history if you're eligible to do that. So fighting it, you want to go to trial? I don't know. That depends on the scenario, depends on the jurisdiction, depends on the judge, depends on the prosecutor, depends on your willingness to do that. But I would say always go in and talk to someone if you have that opportunity.
All right. Following up on the drug possession questions. One, what if you have a card in Georgia for medical possession of marijuana?
That's okay.
Does that affect your ability to carry?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's one of those things, and I actually think we did a video about this about 2 years ago. If you guys go to YouTube and look up U.S. Law Shield Georgia.
I've heard of YouTube.
You've heard of YouTube? No. Yeah, the YouTubes, as we call it. If you go to YouTube and look up U.S. Law Shield Georgia, I've got about 50 videos there that I did for U.S. Law Shield, and one of them is about medical marijuana and CBD oil. The fact is, if you have a medical marijuana card, you're still a user of marijuana. And I think federally, if you answer that 4473 truthfully, you're not going to be able to purchase a firearm, unfortunately.
And what about CBD and possession of that plus a firearm?
CBD is weird because the rules changed a year and a half ago, 2 years ago in Georgia. You can now possess anything that I believe is less than 3%. I don't use CBD, otherwise I would probably know that.
Somebody can answer that question for us.
Yeah, if you medicinally use CBD, let us know. I think the rule is 3%. Anything below 3% you can purchase. The problem with the Georgia law is you can't actually transport it. So it's hard to get it into the state, and it's hard to actually transport it to use it. But if you do use CBD, definitely let us know. That's something that I've had to do the research on before. I've had to do some representation of individuals involving CBD that went the right way. But if you do have some practical experience, please let us know in the comments.
Yeah, that's a good one. We'll have to revisit.
Definitely. Definitely. What else?
Okay, so in Georgia, we have a weapons carry license. How is that different from a concealed carry license? And then I have a follow-up question after that.
Oh, that's a great question. So many times I get the question, well, where do I get my concealed weapons permit? I have a weapons carry license. How do I carry it concealed? Georgia is different than a lot of other states. It used to be the law in Georgia that you could, and this is years and years and years ago, before most of us could carry. It used to be, it actually was called a gun toter's permit. You had to have a permit if you wanted to carry concealed. Otherwise, you could carry openly. And there are some states like that. Alabama is like that. You can carry openly without a weapons carry license, but you have to get a permit to carry concealed. That's not the rule in Georgia. One thing only, weapons carry license. You got to be 21. You can't have any felony convictions, no misdemeanor crimes of domestic violence. You're not on first offender probation. You have no pending felonies. You're not a fugitive from justice. If you have a weapons carry license, you can carry openly or concealed, public or private. The only thing we have is a weapons carry license. Without it, you can still carry home, car, place of business, property that you own or that you lease, or when the firearm is enclosed in the case and unloaded. You can actually shoot at a range without a weapons carry license. But that's the only thing we have. And Georgia is what we call a shall issue state. If you qualify, they have to give it to you. And you don't have to take any weapons training classes for it. Some folks say that's not such a great idea. Some folks say it's a good idea. You know what? I don't care. The law says if you qualify, you must be given that weapons carry license.
Yeah. Follow-up question. What if you have a juvenile record? Does that affect your ability to be approved for a weapons carry license?
It shouldn't, because juveniles don't have convictions. Juveniles have what are called adjudications. And it doesn't create a conviction on your record, and it's supposed to be sealed. And I haven't seen anyone with a juvenile record ever have a problem, but if you do have that problem, let me know. Instagram says we have 1 minute and 42 seconds left.
I didn't know it was timed.
I didn't know that either. So maybe we'll jump off Instagram, but maybe we could continue for a few minutes on Facebook Live. Folks, if you do want to continue with us, look, we'll do this as often as you like. We can do this twice a week. Let us know in the comments. Obviously, share this. I'm happy to answer questions about the law, any questions about the law that I possibly can answer. My focus in my practice is gun law, assisting people with obtaining their records. One of the things that I really do, that I love doing, is helping people to rehabilitate their record. So if you can't own a gun, there are things we can do to make it so that you can. So find us, GeorgiaGunLawyers.com. Go to Facebook, Georgia Gun Lawyers. Obviously, you found us on Instagram. I think once we clean out here at Instagram, we're going to continue over at Facebook. So come on back over and join us there.
And every Friday night, we do the same thing.
Every Friday night. Folks, we have a website just for this. Go to the556.com, THE556.com. That's our website where every Friday night at 5:56 p.m., we talk for about 45 minutes about gun laws. Then we go and we have a Zoom meeting. We all have a drink and we just talk. It's great. I think we're going to have a really good guest this week. I'm working on something right now for you. Join us this coming Friday night, 5:56 p.m., Facebook Live, Georgia Gun Lawyers. And that's where do we also broadcast on the 556?
We broadcast just about everywhere we can.
Pretty much everywhere. So go to the website, take a look at the website. We're doing some great things. So we're hanging it up on Instagram right now. And we're done on Instagram. All right.
Well, Facebook, we like you better anyways.
Oh, so, don't say that.
They can't hear me on Instagram.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever. All right. So let's see. Do we have any other comments? Do we have any other questions on Facebook?
There's a few more that we didn't get to.
Okay.
But let's go ahead and talk about them here.
Okay.
Does Georgia have a castle doctrine that covers your vehicle?
Does Georgia have a castle doctrine that covers your vehicle? In short, yes. The castle doctrine doesn't necessarily apply to a place. It applies to a circumstance. And what the castle doctrine is it's a legal philosophy that says you're the king or the queen of your castle. My wife says that I'm the village idiot of our castle, but that's okay. I love her anyway. The castle doctrine says that you can protect your castle from invaders by the use of force or even deadly force. And in Georgia, our castle is our habitation, our home, our car, or our place of business. Mm-hmm. So you can protect your car when you're inside it, just like you can your home when you're inside it. Now, a little bit different if it's outside. Now, the law does say a habitation, but if you're in the car and someone's trying to get in, there's a big legal distinction there between you being in the car and someone trying to fight their way in, or you being outside the car and watching someone break into the car.
Yes.
And even if the law doesn't necessarily draw a distinction, I will tell you that most prosecutors and most juries do. So be very careful if someone's trying to break into your car about the actions that you take.
Yes.
Now, when I say it applies more to a circumstance, the counsel doctrine goes hand in hand with what we have in Georgia, which is called a stand your ground law. What the stand your ground law says is that if you are justified in using threats of force, or deadly force to protect yourself, another person, your habitation, or your property, then you do not have to first seek an avenue of escape. You can stand your ground and protect yourself, and the law then provides you immunity from conviction for a crime or from civil immunity if you're sued. It doesn't keep you from being arrested, and it doesn't keep you from being sued, but it does protect you from being convicted of a crime.
Excellent. All right, so we were also talking earlier today about some of the questions that we've gotten through our messengers. So we get a lot of questions, and I think we got like 4 or 5 during our feed on Instagram asking about being in that weird kind of age range for lots of reasons. But here we're talking about firearms where you're over 18 and are legally able to purchase a handgun, but you're under 21 and you cannot legally have a weapons carry license. So when you're in that 18 to 21 range,
right,
what exactly are your gun laws, assuming you're legally allowed to possess a firearm?
Well, for starters, let's talk about long guns, rifles and shotguns. You can possess a rifle or a shotgun. You can carry a rifle or a shotgun without a weapons carry license. And it only even needs to be carried openly if it's loaded. Now, it's hard to carry a rifle or a shotgun concealed, and even if you could do it, I don't know that I would recommend it, especially in public. But you can carry a rifle, you can carry a shotgun. You can possess a firearm, a handgun, in your home, in your car, in your place of business, on property that you own or that you lease, or when it is enclosed in a case and unloaded. Now remember, we said that an unloaded firearm is no round in the chamber. There's only one law in Georgia that deals with when a firearm is loaded or unloaded, and it's the law concerning juveniles in possession of firearms. So technically, if there's no round in the chamber, it could be unloaded. And who's to say what a case could be? A case could be a hard-sided case. The case could be the backpack that you're carrying. But if you're carrying it that way and you're between the age of 18 and 21, you're probably on shaky legal ground. And if you're stopped by an officer and for whatever reason that officer decides to search that bag and you're not consenting to that search, there shouldn't be anything about you that would indicate that officer that you have a firearm. But if they find it, you're probably going to be arrested for carrying a concealed weapon or carrying without a weapons carry license. And so in that scenario, I definitely say you need to consult with an attorney. So there are ways that you can do it. They're tricky. Now, you don't have to be over the age of 21 to possess a weapons carry license in Georgia, but the only folks who can get that are folks who are active duty or honorably discharged from the armed forces, and you'd have to present proof that you were honorably discharged and that you received firearms training when you were part of the armed forces.
That's nuanced. We should do a whole special video and put that out there.
It's just more work for me. I don't know if I like that.
For you?
Yeah, sure, for me. What else?
All right, we had a question come in that asks about getting a firearm if you're a non-violent federal felon.
Federal felonies are difficult. So let's start with the premise. Let's start with the state first. If you have a felony conviction in Georgia, there are things that you can do to turn that conviction around. You can go back in time as far as 1968 to have that conviction turned into a dismissal. There are specific rules. This is what we call a retroactive first offender. This law is relatively new. It's only been in place since 2015, I believe, and in that period of time, it's undergone changes at least 3 times. If you've never used a first offender, and you didn't use it for your first and only felony offense, or let's say a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence, you could go back in time to have that changed to a dismissal, but there are rules that are involved. First and foremost, the prosecutor has to agree to do it. You have to have a lawyer who can file that proper motion, or obviously you could do it yourself. And if the judge and the prosecutor agree, and if the judge agrees that you can do it, then you have it turned into a first offender, and then since you've completed everything, and hopefully you have completed everything, then the case would be dismissed. The judge would issue an order exonerating you of any criminal purpose. That's actually the language in the order. And that conviction could be turned into dismissal. I've done 12 or 13 of those in the past 2 or 3 years. And typically we're very successful with that. Now we do get some pushback occasionally from jurisdictions where the prosecutors don't want us to necessarily do this. And that's something that we have to deal with, which is one reason I say go to a qualified attorney to assist you. And I'm not the only attorney who does these. There are lots of attorneys out there. Just look, go online and look up firearms restoration or retroactive first offender or restore rights, and there are attorneys out there who can assist you. If you can't do that for whatever reason, you can also seek a pardon. In Georgia, you don't go to the governor. The governor has no clemency powers, no pardon powers. You go to the Georgia Bureau of Pardons and Paroles, and you can request a restoration of your firearm rights, you can request a pardon, and you can request a restoration of your civil rights. Those are 3 separate things. You have to address each one specifically depending on what it is you want to do. And if you want to regain your firearm rights, then you have to specifically do a firearms restoration. I'm working on a couple of these right now. I've been successful in pardons in the past. You do not need a lawyer to do them. You can go online to the Board of Pardon and Parole and download the application and get started. Again, some people like to use attorneys because some attorneys have valuable experience in that area, and I've actually done some of those. When it comes to federal pardons, it's a much more difficult scenario, much more difficult. There are 2 avenues if you have a federal conviction that you could request a pardon or a restoration of those rights. One is through the Attorney General, and they have an office. It's through the Attorney General. I think the ATF has this office, but this office is not funded, which means they don't do anything. So there's really no way that you can get anything good to happen out of that. The other thing to do is to request a presidential pardon. Presidential pardons are very difficult to get. Very difficult to get.
I think they give one to a turkey every Thanksgiving. Is that correct?
They do give one to a turkey every Thanksgiving. You have to have at least as clean a record as that turkey. Okay. I looked this information up just this morning.
About the turkey?
No, about just stop it. In 2019, I believe there were 2,307 federal presidential pardon requests. You go through the office of the pardon attorney to do that. There were 7 pardons granted, and most of them were for people in the news. So they're difficult to get, but you can do it. You just have to have a plan in place. Again, you don't need a lawyer. Some folks like to retain attorneys for those types of things. So you can get it done, but it is an uphill battle.
All right.
What else?
We have a question that you can see there. A retired LEOSA credential holder with a Georgia, is it post or POST?
Post.
Weapon qualification card. Can they carry anywhere a uniformed officer can carry?
That is a good question. So what we're talking about is LEOSA certified officers. They're retired officers. The LEOSA Act is a federal act that was signed into law by President Bush that would allow retired police officers who meet certain criteria, I believe it's 10 years before retirement, and who requalify every year to carry as if a uniformed officer would carry. And I'd love to tell you that I know everything about that statute, but I haven't fully unraveled it. I do believe it would allow you to carry anywhere a uniformed officer can carry, which would give you some grace in places like school zones or other locations. But I think I'd have to do a little bit of research on that. So the gentleman, I'm not going to call his name out, the gentleman who did find us on Facebook to ask that, if you will contact me directly, do a DM, I'll be happy to talk with you on the phone. I'll give you my cell phone number or my office number, and we can talk about that. I'll do a little bit of research on that. That may be something that we have to post a video about. The LEOSA is out there, and it does allow retired officers to carry in ways that normal folks like me can't carry. But I want to be sure and give you the best possible answer.
Yeah, let's look into that.
Yep.
I like that. Here's another traffic question.
Okay.
On a ticket, this individual was allegedly going 85 in a 65 and passing exit 11 on 400.
Georgia 400.
On March 1st. They have delayed the court date twice because of the COVID, and this person has court coming up on Monday.
Okay. So 80.
How does it look?
How's that look? All right. So if you're on 400, depending on how close, so exit 11, that's actually going to be pretty close, which I would think means that you're either in Johns Creek potentially. Well, I don't know if it'd be Johns Creek.
10 is State Bridge. 11
10 State Bridge
is McFarland. No, Windward.
Windward. Okay. Well, you may be Alpharetta. That's probably Alpharetta Police, and if it is Alpharetta Police, you might have some ability to discuss with the prosecutor there. She's very fair, but she's tough. And I've known her for a long time. You're 85 and a 65. That makes you a super speeder. So you need to get down at least below 84. So you'll want to go in and talk with them about your record, about some way to get down to 14 potentially. 14 would be 79. So you need 6 miles an hour. See if you can get them down to that. Go in, talk with them. If you just pay the ticket, you're going to get a fine from them, and you're going to get a fine, which I believe is $200 from the DDS for the super speeder. It's $200 or $300. So you definitely want to go in and talk with them about that. And if you have any questions, give us a call.
All right. Well, unless we have any more questions, I think we've touched on as much as we could really pull in from the feed.
Right.
I'm sure we missed something, so don't hesitate to send some questions in or catch us next time we're live.
Listen, I've really enjoyed this. I think it's been great. Mariana, you've been fantastic as always for getting our tech all set up and running for us. Guys, let us know what you think about the feed. Let us know if there's something that we need to do a little differently. If you like this, and this is not something that's said on Instagram, go and like us over at Facebook. Follow us on Georgia Gun Lawyers. Go and like us at YouTube. We've got a few videos up, and we're putting more up every week. Let us know what we can answer, questions. We'll do this. I'll do this twice a week until court gets back and says, well, we'll do it twice a week anyway. I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, it's been good.
Yeah, fantastic. So again, my name is Matt Kilgo. This is Mariana Wegener. You can see that. It's not a lawyer. She's listed right there, but she's the one that keeps the lights turned on around here. GeorgiaGunLawyers.com is our website. The556.com, very important. We're there every Friday night at 5:56 to talk about firearms. Call us with questions. I can give my office number, 678-842-4331, 678-842-4331. You can email us, matt@georgiagunlawyers.com. Be happy to take those questions. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch. We're all over the place. So thanks again, folks.
In every way possible.
And every way possible. That's right. We are 100 different directions all the time. Thanks so much. Oh, go to Gun Law Seminar and find where we're going to be doing a use of force seminar here in the. Thank you.
I can't help where it pops up. That's automatic.
What's on this side? Go to gunlawseminar.com and find where we're going to be next week. So we can meet. That'll be great. Look forward to seeing everybody there. Thanks again so much. Have a great day.